Hello, everybody. I don't know let's see who is here. Got a few people here. We're going to give everybody a few minutes to join in and sign into the webinar. My name is Molly Anderson. This is Trisha Duffin with me. We are both from Gavel at www.gavel.io. We are a legal automation, no-code legal automation platform. You do not have to be a customer of Gavel to join this automation webinar. We're just here to talk about how to go about automating your estate planning documents. So we're going to wait a couple more minutes, see if anybody else wants to join. I see quite a few people signing on right now. Just so you know, we do have options for chat, Q&A. So just kind of take a look at the options on your screen. And if you have any questions, please feel free to put them into the chat or the Q&A, and we will start getting to those. So we'll give this one more minute while I pull up my slides. For everyone signing on, welcome. I am pulling up my slides. We're giving people a few minutes just to sign on, and we're going to get started. Okay. Okay, I think that's plenty of time. I see a question has popped up. Hello to whoever put in this question. Okay, so we're going to get started. My name is Molly Anderson. I am the Director of Content at Gavel. I am a attorney licensed in Georgia, and I practiced estate planning as one of my practice areas. I actually was a Gavel customer and user prior to joining the Gavel team. So I'm coming from a place of having used Gavel in my own practice. I ran my own solo firm. I automated as much as I could, because if anybody here is a solo attorney, you know how difficult it is to do all of the things. And Gavel actually, it just revolutionized what I was doing. It changed my practice, changed my life, and allowing me to have a little bit more time to work on high-level tasks in my practice and therefore spend more time with my family. So today we're going to talk about automation specifically for estate planning. I also have with me Trisha Duffin. She is our customer success lead here at Gavel. She, prior to joining the Gavel team, was also a pro Gavel expert. At that time, we were called Documate. Many of you know us from our Documate name. So, and I may even slip up here and there and say Documate, but those are one and the same. We did a big rebrand at the end of January of this year. So you'll hear me every once in a while, I might say Documate. So today we are going to go over sort of why we might want to automate your estate planning practice. You can take some of these lessons. If you're not an estate planning attorney, this will apply generally to quite a few different practice areas, but we'll be talking specifically about estate planning documents, processes, and how this might work for estate planning attorneys. Okay, so we're going to go through, first of all, why would we want to automate anything? It's not how we're taught to do estate planning in law school. So why do we want to do it now? What are the benefits? What are the risks? And how can you apply that to your own practice? Next, what can I automate? There's so many different options, so we won't go through everything, but we'll go through some different categories in the estate planning arena about what we can and cannot automate. In estate planning, it's pretty wide open. There's a lot that we can do. Next, we're going to practice a workflow setup, and we'll go through kind of the basics of how I set up my workflow, but we'll go through the different options of how you can set up an estate planning workflow. And when I say workflow, I mean the automation process. We're going to set up the framework for that. And then we'll create a template. I don't know, just depending on time, if we will create a full template today. We will look at how to set up a workflow. If you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat, in the Q&A box. Either way, we'll just kind of keep an eye on that. We are going to get to as much of this as we can, but really, I want this to be interactive. So if you have questions, I will get to as many of those as possible. Please feel free to put those in the chat. And if we don't get all the way through creating a template at the end of this, I'll make a YouTube video, I'll send it out and show you exactly that process. And anybody that was here today, you'll get that YouTube video. Okay. So why do we want to automate? Automation has a ton of benefits for attorneys and for legal professionals, and not just solo attorneys. It could be larger firms, it could be government offices, it could be courts and the clerk of court. So many different people in the legal profession. We are repetitively drafting the same documents over and over, and we're making the same kind of logical decisions over and over. And that repetition that should be a signal that this is something you can automate, and you can do it safely and easily now with the technology that's out there today, whether or not you're using Gavel, which is super easy to use, or you might have a legacy software, but obviously I'm biased, you know, my preference. However, there's so many different ways to automate, and many people are even using Word, different options that you can use there, Excel spreadsheets, things like that. Lots of different options. It's going to save time on your low-level tasks. That's a huge one for me. We had a study, we surveyed some of our users to see how much time they were saving, and they saved 90% of what is mostly non-billable time anyway, especially if you have your staff, like your office staff, drafting documents based on looking at your client intake forms. If you've got your clients coming in, they're filling out like a PDF or a written form, or even if you have an online form, and then you have somebody from your office taking those and creating the rough drafts of your estate planning documents, you can save them time, tons of time, and not just in the drafting process, but also in the review process, because you have so much consistency when you're automating that the review process is also reduced. So we've had our customers tell us that they're saving 90%. We've had people say up to 95% from what I've seen. Trisha, let me know if you've seen any other percentages higher than that, but I mean, it's pretty consistent. We see our customers save tons of time. And I also see people, I think attorneys sometimes get scared that for saving 90% of time, that means we're billing 90% less time, but it really doesn't, the math doesn't math there. I don't know why, but it's mostly non-billable tasks that you're saving that time on. So you're saving overhead cost. You're not really reducing your billable time. And to the extent that you are reducing that billable time, you're able to bring on more clients. I was speaking to an attorney a few weeks ago who used Gavel, and he's created some workflows for other attorneys' offices to use. Like, he's automated entire case files in different practice areas. He does like personal injury and probate. But the same concept is applicable here. And his calculations were, I think he was at 95%. His clients were saving 95% of the time. So this is especially great too if you offer flat fee estate planning or fixed fee subscription. I know that has been talked about a little bit in the estate planning world. So there's a lot of different options there. But yeah, we're saving time on low-level tasks, the things that, I mean, you don't need to spend your day thinking about copying your client's name from the intake form, pasting it into your Word document that you got from the last will that you drafted that you really enjoy. You don't need to spend time on that. It's this automation makes it so much easier. So we want to streamline that. One of the other really important benefits for me, especially when I was creating this for my practice, is that you increase your accuracy and reduce errors. So I know there are quite a few firms out there that use different sorts of software platforms that include this sort of automation already. But when I was trained in small firms and mid-sized firms. I was told to find a file, find the most recent will that somebody drafted, pull that up, find the client intake information, copy their name, paste it every time you see a client name. Then go back into the client intake form, find their birthday, paste it where you have to put in the birthday. And I didn't know at the time, I am embarrassed to even tell you this, I was like, oh, this is normal. Look at me. I'm using my keyboard shortcuts. I'm so technologically advanced. And at the time, maybe I'm aging myself, but that was great. I mean, that I was able to take these templates. I wasn't, reinventing the wheel. It was pretty quick, but there are a lot of errors when you do that. If you've got, if you're doing find and replace, and there's a typo in a previous document, you're going to miss certain names and they're not going to get changed. And when you are going through your review process, if you miss that typo, or if you miss that, a wrong name in the will, and you present it to your clients in the review session, it reduces their confidence in you. We're all human. It happens. I've done it. I tell my clients when I was practicing, like, we're going to find at least one typo. Let's, circle it, bring it up. But we want to reduce those kinds of errors if we can. What if they didn't find a typo? What if you tell them you're going to find a typo and you don't actually find one? They're going to love you. They're going to think you're amazing. Especially when you have like 40 to 60 pages of documents that you're presenting them. They're going to think you are a total rock star. So we're going to increase accuracy, reduce errors, especially too when you are adding in things like conditional logic, which we will take a look at in a few minutes. That is really going to reduce even like your own decision errors. Like if you knew your client needed this specific trust, but you forgot to go pull that clause out of template B and put it into template A, we're reducing that issue anytime we have a workflow set up to automate that decision process. And lastly, but not least, we're going to improve your client experience. I have, as I mentioned, I started practicing with intake forms that were, honestly, they were printed out. My clients were coming in. This was not the way I set everything up. It's just the way law firms have done it for a while. And sometimes you have clients, especially in the estate planning world, that they want to write things down. They don't want to use technology. So that's what we were doing. We were copying everything into, like a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. And then it was just very kind of clunky for the client sometimes too, especially if they weren't those clients that really wanted a paper form. It was a clunky experience. They had to, scan it, email it in, or drop it by the office. When I opened my own firm, which was around the start of the pandemic, and automated this process, I cannot tell you how many comments I got from my clients who loved doing their intake online, just filling out their forms, multiple choice or text input, being able to do it from their phone or their computer, and not having to worry about how to get that to me, how to find a scanner, how to email that document, or whether they could drive it over in the next week or two. It was just in my inbox automatically, or in my data management or case management software. So clients love it. We've seen in our surveys of attorneys that use Gavel specifically that clients will, like many of them have received unsolicited compliments from their clients about the intake process. It's just really smooth. It works out really well. And if you set it up in a way that is, we're going to look for the most efficient way. So you're not asking like 9,000 questions. We are going to try to make it as efficient as possible, ask the least number of questions to get all of the information that you need. It's going to save time for the clients. You are going to look like you know so much, and all of you guys do, about what you're doing, but it really shows that off when you have this workflow, you send it to the clients, or if you have a client portal to do that, it's very impressive for clients. One thing you can also do for this is during the intake workflow, add in some video to explain why you're asking a question. Maybe you have a question in there that's like, if you need help with this, like, click here, and you can insert a video to explain the process. Like, here's why you need a trustee and a trustee and a guardian for your children. Why are these two different roles? You can explain that in the intake process itself, and you're not fielding phone calls at that point or answering emails. Like, how do I answer this? Put that all in the workflow. The common questions that pop up when you're talking clients through this, you can go ahead and provide that information. And again, when clients have this at the tip of their fingers and can do this on their own time, they think you're amazing. And they think that you have got your stuff together, which you all do. So that's why you're here today. So those are the big reasons to automate. Really quickly, I'm going to check the chat, make sure that everyone has, if anybody has any questions, that we're answering those. And Tricia, feel free to chime in if you've got anything. Okay, looks like we're good. Okay, so what can you automate? The list is very long for estate planning, but we're going to go over some high level options. And I want to give some kudos to Tricia and our other team member, Maddie, Madeline Buck. She is currently at Legal Week this week. We're recording this in March of 2023. But she put together this great, lots of great content for us on how our customers are automating their estate planning practices. So I'm pulling some content from that. I want to make sure that she gets a shout out here. So what can you automate? Last will and testament. That's the first one on the list, and maybe one of the most controversial ones. I don't know. You guys let me know in the chat if you think that this is controversial or not. To me, it's the last will and testament can be so complicated, but we're following a pretty strict decision process. We know the client wants to protect their children and the children are minors. So we need a testamentary trust, something like that. We know what questions to ask our clients to put in those clauses in the will. And if you know what questions to ask, and if they are like yes or no questions, or if there's a very specific decision-making process based on the answer, we can add that logic to your template, and you don't need 20 will templates. You can do one template, add in the logic, and based on the answers from your client intake workflow that we're going to automate, we'll take a look at how to do that in a minute. You can then take that one template for the will, and it's going to respond to their answers, and you don't have to go in and change all of these different things. That's what I ended up doing. I had my will where I knew, like, if I had a married couple that was coming in, everything was set up to add a spouse into the will or change the wording so that it was his spouse or her spouse, or however we needed to change pronouns, clauses, if there were minor children, all of these different changes. So it is doable. You've seen it on like estate planning specific platforms, but you can actually automate your own templates too. So it's not too complicated. I have zero coding experience. I have zero technology training, and I was able to do it. So if you can create something like a Google form, this is something that is now accessible to you. It hasn't always been, but document automation has changed a lot in the last, I mean, even 5 years, honestly. Other items that you can automate: pour over will, trust funding documents, HIPAA release, all of these like one-off forms, like the HIPAA release, or the some of you might have like state-specific power of attorney forms or healthcare directives. All of these one-off forms are perfect for automation. They're amazing documents to start with if you're just like, if you're a beginner in the automation world and you want to sort of test it out before you start, spend a couple of hours automating your will template, then these are perfect. If you've got, especially for something like, I know for Georgia, the power of attorney form, you're listing like a couple of names, you're listing the attorney in fact, you're listing an address, maybe phone number, and a couple of elections. So it's more fill in the blank than conditional logic, although there is a little bit of the logic in the one that I created, but it's very straightforward, easy to automate. So these are perfect. Same thing for, like we mentioned, power of attorney, but guardianship of minors and pets. And then we get to more complex documents like a living trust. And those, again, those can be automated, and you can do it sort of all in one bundle or workflow. And we'll get into that a little bit more in just a second. And also some of your more like administrative paperwork. So if you have like a binder that you give to your clients with all of your estate planning documents that you've created for them, you might have a list in the front of all of the documents you have, or you might have a client letter that explains how the trust works. These things too, it doesn't have to be the official estate planning document. It could be documents like this that are a little bit more administrative. So take a look at this list. Let me know what you think about that. See that we have a question. Trisha, if you want to read the question in the Q&A and then maybe chime in, I'm going to keep moving forward, but we'll take a break in a second and see if we can address this question. This one's from Alan. Thank you, Alan, for submitting this. Okay. So let me go back to my slide. Okay. We're still on, what can we automate? And we're going to talk about some of the higher level automations that we can create. So you can automate a internal workflow or a client-facing workflow. And what do we mean by that? If you want to automate your client intake process, you're sending your client a questionnaire. They're filling out the data themselves on their computer or their phone, and sending it back to you, just clicking the button to submit. You're receiving that information in the documents, you're reviewing documents and then sending those back to them. That's a client-facing workflow because the client is involved. They're going to fill something out. So somebody besides your office sees your questionnaire, your workflow. If you have an internal workflow, that's something that you're using within your office. So you're filling everything out. The client does not know that they're automating documents, and they may not even know if you do a client-facing workflow. They're just thinking that they're doing intake. So if you don't want to tell them that you've set up an automation, because sometimes clients may think that means that you're not actually drafting documents, that you're not using your legal knowledge, but you're still reviewing those documents. To me, it's still drafting those documents because you're drafting the templates. But the internal version is you're just doing everything in-house. You get a client intake form, and like on Gavel, you can use that same set of data and push it into an internal workflow and get the documents that you want, but the client doesn't see that second workflow. So internal workflows are just within your office. Sometimes there are plenty of different reasons why you might want to do that. I ended up doing that for my practice, but I think if I had to do it again, I probably would do a client-facing workflow and switch it up. I just ended up automating my initial estate planning workflow as an internal workflow, and so I kept it that way. And then the second thing is automating and using your integrations. So whatever automation platform you're using, you can integrate that often with your practice management platform, whether there's a native integration. For example, Gavel has a Clio integration where you can bring in Clio matters and numbers and all of the different types of Clio fields. You can bring those into your workflows and kind of pull that information, run an internal workflow and pop out documents just like that. Or you can have workflows that are not native, but they're still connecting to your practice management or your data storage, whatever you're using. So you can use items like, or platforms like Zapier, IFTTT. We've got like API and webhook capability at Gavel. So all of it, and we've got an integration with Zapier too. So all of those different items or platforms you could use to create your own integrations and pull in information from other sources if you need to. You can also push information in certain cases out to things like spreadsheets. It depends on, what automation platform you're using and what automations and integrations you have. Okay, Trisha, do you want to let us know what the question was that came up?
Of course. So Alan actually brought up a great point about how many questions are too many questions for a client. And especially when you're talking about estate planning and feeling like there's a lot of data that you might need to gather, a lot of answers you might need to get from your client regarding different points. How much is too much? How much does it feel like you're kind of overwhelming your client, or maybe like asking them too many questions about their personal things and too much secession? So my original thought when I was answering this with him is that obviously it's a case-by-case basis. But I think one of the things that sets us apart with Gavel is utilizing our data manager, which I'm sure we're going to go into in a bit, to kind of break up your workflows into smaller workflows that you can then push information through. And then with our client portals, you can actually assign workflows to your clients. So they could actually be assigned one workflow to start with, just to get general information, and maybe a follow-up to ask about people that are in their heirs and beneficiaries, and maybe a third to even ask about assets or different things that they might have.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I totally agree. I think it's a case-by-case basis. So if you know that your clients, or most of your clients coming in, are really asking for simple estate plans, then you don't want to have like a 50-page questionnaire. But if you have clients that are coming in with they've got a high net worth, very complex estate plan, they're going to be they're prepared. They know that they're going to have to provide some information to you in order to get like a Q-tip trust and all of these different tax specific documents that we might need to create for that. So yeah, I do think it is case specific, and it's based on your target client and your, the person that's like the target persona that's coming into your office. Like, who are you marketing to? Who is coming in? What's the bread and butter of your practice? If you do have these really, like if you need a ton of information, like Trisha said, breaking it up into like bite-sized sections sometimes can be really helpful. So like maybe you've got emails that are going out on automated days, like maybe you've got a sequence that goes out to your clients. So, day one, you're doing basic intake, and then day three, okay, now we really need to get into some of your assets. So yeah, I think breaking it up is not a bad idea. You don't want to overwhelm. Some of this might be trial and error for you, just to see what your specific clients really want. So you can see if they want to answer, multiple pages. It's going to take 45 minutes to get through, and they want to do it all in one sitting. Get some feedback. Ask your clients, see what they like and what they don't like. See what puts them off. I mean, at this point, once they're filling out this questionnaire, they should have already retained you. So we shouldn't be in risk of losing them as a client by doing this experimentation. And you can let them know too. You can let them know what you're doing. Like, hey, we're trying out this way to do the questionnaire. We want to make sure our client experience is, at the very top of the scale. So we're going to try it this way, but give me your feedback. If you don't like it, let me know and we can break it down for you. Awesome question, Alan. Thank you so much.
And I also wanted to add here just real quick is that one of the ways I've seen other estate planners utilize this is by creating their own review pages that just kind of as a breaking point to kind of go, you've answered certain questions, here's some, because you can build your own review page and then maybe highlight, this would be a good time to stop and continue later. And you could use the save to continue later button to then allow them to take a break, maybe, step away for a bit and then come back the next day.
Yeah. That ability to take a break is great, especially when like sometimes clients are having to look in their document files to figure out like where are my assets? I don't know. What is, Aunt Edna's birth date or address or phone number for me to list her on my, beneficiary form. So yeah, totally agree that the ability to come back later and fill it out, I think clients really enjoy that too. Awesome. Okay, I'm going to keep moving on with the presentation. Trisha, if you want to pull up your demo workflow site and show a little bit of the data manager feature that you were talking about just a few minutes ago. I'm going to go through with my slide while you pull that up, but we can take a quick look at that in just a minute if you want to do that. Okay. So how to automate. Here is what you guys are here for, I think. How are we going to set this up for you? So let me know in the chat how many of you are new. Raise your hand if you're new to automation. No judgment whatsoever. Everybody's new to automation at one point. And, maybe like 3 or 4 years ago, I was new to automation, and now I am hanging out at Gavel every day. And this is what I do. I love it so much. And I think estate planning attorneys really are very well equipped to automate because that's just how our brains work. We know, like, we're given a set of input and we know the output that needs to happen. So like our brain is already working that way. I think you guys will enjoy it, but let me know in the chat if anybody here is new to automation or if anybody is a pro. I'd love to see where you guys are. Okay. So we have a few different methods that we have come up with based on like surveying what our customers are doing and looking at the different workflows that we've seen online and, either from our own customers or from other automation sites out there. So our one of our client success managers, Maddie, she really went through a lot of work to kind of survey what was out there. And here's what we found. The multiple documents method, which is when you're starting with the choice of documents. So I'll go through the different options, and then Trisha, if you want to fill in some different thoughts on these, feel free. The next option is the intake or interview method, and this is where you're starting with the client's information and going from there. So instead of starting with your templates that you're going to create a workflow from, you're actually pulling in, you're starting with how this appears to the client. So this is really for like an external or client facing workflow, this second method. But it's for me, it's a very logical way to think about it because the client has to give specific information to you. And so putting it in that sort of order, what are they answering first? Sometimes that can be a helpful way to look at this. And then the workflow can expand. You can add as many questions as you need to, or as many documents as you need to at the end. And you might be adding documents at the end of the process and realize, oh, I have to add another intake question here. There's some more information I need. So you can go back to the, you don't have to do the process chronologically. You can go back and edit at different points. And then the last one is the important people method. This one was really interesting to me because I would not have come up with this method on my own. So I really like this. I think it's really creative. But in this method, you start by listing the important people for the estate plan in a repeating item variable. And that's specific to Gavel. What we have is something called a repeating item where, as you know, like you might have a will that has 2 beneficiaries, or there might be 10 beneficiaries. And instead of just putting like guessing that the maximum amount of beneficiaries someone's going to have is 5, so you only put 5 slots in there, and then the next person has 10 beneficiaries, you don't have to worry about that with a repeating item. You can just, at the bottom of like, if you're going to fill in somebody's name, birth date, address, there's an option to add another, and then add another, and then add another, and you keep adding until you have everything you need. So that's a repeating item. You can use it in different ways. So it could be a number, it could be text, it could be a date, it could be all sorts of different things, different types of input. So yeah, so when you use this repeating item variable, you're listing all the important people in the estate plan, and then you're pulling that information throughout the workflow. If you have integrated with your practice management software, I think this is a really cool way to do it because I can think of a few different ways where you could just pull that information, and then take that information, push it into a workflow, and it could be a really quick process. Trisha, do you have any thoughts on these methods?
Yeah, I think that a lot of times it's also about like how you may be envisioning your actual different products you might be wanting to sell or manage or use. So I think that a lot of people will use various methods at once. So you may have something that's more about the multiple documents method, might be something more internal where you just want to do a one-off HIPAA release. So you have a workflow that lists all the different documents that are possible and just guide you through to that question. Whereas that intake interview method might be more about like a client intake that you're pushing into other workflows or using that as more of an interview process. The important people method I think is really exciting. I think I love how it's being utilized. And it actually is really nice for the client as well. Because once you list everybody who's in your life, then the questions about who's going to be your executor, you explain who the executor is, and then you have a list of all the important people to you. So those would be the people that you'd be picking from for your executors, your trustees, your guardians. So I think it's a really nice way to kind of like bundle everything, get that data to begin with, and then be able to use it throughout the rest of the workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll add to that I think I used the intake or interview method when I made my automation, but I did it in a way, it wasn't a client facing workflow, but it was just the way that I thought about the process. So it doesn't, if you use one of these methods, you can play around with them. You don't have to use it in the exact way that we're stating here. These are just the trends that we have found when we're looking at what our customers have created or what we have personally created or what other people in the field are creating. But yeah, my brain just thought about it in terms of like, okay, these are the questions that I'm asking the client. So this is what I'm going to put in my workflow. I'm going to answer these questions. And that's just how I structured it, but it wasn't actually going to the client. So there we go. Lots of different ways to do this. Okay. So one thing I wanted to add on here that we haven't talked about yet, but I think is a really important part of automating your practice is productization. And what that means is selling your legal services online in a way that you are less involved than the traditional client relationship. And when I start explaining this, sometimes it sounds very scary, but I think it is so cool and such an amazing tool that attorneys can now provide for people that need legal services, but are either they don't have the funds to do a traditional attorney-client relationship. They don't know where to start. They don't have attorneys in their extended network of family or friends. They don't have any family members that have ever hired an attorney for this. So there are so many reasons why people may not be willing to actually hire an attorney, but they would be willing to complete this process online, kind of like what, LegalZoom does, or, there's a bunch of different platforms out there that do this on a large scale. But the benefit of being able to create this on your own, like let's say you automate your estate planning practice for your clients and realize you can make a few tweaks and actually just offer it to the public. The benefit of doing this is that it opens up your market for who you're reaching substantially. I just drafted a white paper for Gavel a couple of months ago about the legal ethics of productization. And while I was looking up statistics for that, I was amazed at, the market for online legal services is over $10 billion last year. I think it was 11 something billion. It's insane. So there's just this enormous market, enormous demand for online legal services. And the only options right now, we've got a lot of our clients are offering legal products, but when you look at the market as a whole, the majority of the options are these big box, like LegalZoom creators. And there is this section of the market that really wants to know who is drafting their documents. They don't want to talk to you, but they want to know who you are and what your background is. And they'd be much more willing to do a reduced flat fee for just getting the documents themselves and figuring out how to sign it. And that's essentially what productization is, just offering your services online. It doesn't have to look like a standalone app. You don't have to do tons and tons of marketing. If you've got like a website set up for your law firm, you can offer it on that same page sometimes. Some of our clients will create a separate LLC or operating entity to do that, and they might create a separate web page. But when you get started, you can do something like that. Gavel has a marketplace where we are putting legal apps on there so that consumers can find all of these different legal apps. So we're trying to make it so that the access to justice gap is not quite so large, and that consumers have one single place to find that. And right now it's free for attorneys to put their legal products or legal apps on there. So if you've got something that's already made, let us know. Send us an email. My email's at the end of this, but it's molly@gavel.io. You can also do hello@gavel.io. Email us. Let us know if you've got an app and you want it up there. We'll help you. We're working on trying to optimize that to get more consumer eyes on it and get those, SEO terms in there, all of that. So we're trying to push some business your way. But yeah, productization I think it's a huge part of where legal is going. I think if your competitors are not doing it already, they will be doing it soon. I think it's just going to happen. One thing that I think is very interesting that I've heard at a lot of legal conferences over the past 6 months to a year is that, legal technology is something that is not just a tool for attorneys to use, but it's also for clients to use. And clients know that. They expect some sort of tools to use as part of their legal services, or they expect you to be using those tools. So clients are very tech savvy, and especially after the pandemic, they know what's out there, and they want to start using that. And you'll see a lot of buzz too around AI and things like that. The clients know. But yeah, let me know if anybody is creating a legal product or interested in creating a legal product. Put it in the chat. Let us know what you're thinking about. A couple of tips for that before we get to our sort of automation, like our workshop part of this. Start small. Go look at our white paper. I'll try and put a link in the chat in just a minute, but you can go to our website, gavel.io, and check out our white paper. It has got some best practices in there for how to start, but start offering it in the jurisdiction that you're licensed in. That's going to, avoid any sort of unauthorized practice of law issues. If you don't want to start out offering it in all 50 states, start out where you're licensed. Limit it to that. Put a good disclaimer on your site saying, I'm an attorney, it's drafted by an attorney, but these are not legal services, and we're only offering these to, this specific state or If you're if you're not in the United States, wherever your jurisdiction is, just make that clear on your website. But start out small, see how it goes. It costs very little overhead to do this. I mean, like a couple of days to create your workflow and documents and start testing them. One of the clients that I've spoken to, he did just like 1 week of testing, like really intense testing, and that was it. Now it works all on its own. It's just in the background. It's like passive income for him, and he is super successful in the workflow product that he's created. So in order to do this, though, it does need to be client facing. So it has to be some kind of automation that you can send to an external person that's not within your organization or your law firm. So make sure you've got capabilities for that.
I just want to jump in real quick. I want to let everybody know we did have the chat set to a different setting. It's now open to everyone for the chat. So anybody who was putting anything in the chat, now we all can see it.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Trisha. Thank you for doing that. I see Jay put something in there. Jay, I see part of your comment, but I can't see the whole thing. It says you're doing the estate planning, so feel free to add on to that. But yeah, if anybody's doing productization, I'd love to hear what you're doing. And if you've run into any automation challenges with that, let us know. We're here to kind of workshop and brainstorm with you. So we're happy to try to, problem solve and answer any questions. Awesome. I see a question on here. Can you show us some examples of legal product sites using Gavel? Yeah, absolutely. You can actually, if you, I'll try to get a link up here in just a minute, or Trish, if you want to look for a link, but one of the most well-known ones is Hello Divorce. They're built on Gavel. So that's not estate planning. They do divorce automation, like uncontested divorce where people don't have representation. You can look on their site and see, but you can also go to our marketplace, the Gavel marketplace. Let me see if I can pull that up. But the Gavel marketplace is going to have like multiple different apps that you can look at. You can see screenshots of what they're doing, how they look. And I say app, I mean, like, they're not all designed with like different graphic design, but they're separate domains. You send your client a link. It leads to your workflow that you've created, or you send the public a link. And you can see how the workflow looks. You can see the output documents, what they look like, just like a sample watermarked output document. That's a great place to peruse and see what people are doing and creating. Now, that's not going to show everything that everybody's ever built on Gavel. It's just a select number of people that wanted to post something on the marketplace, but it gives a really good variety of what's out there and what people are creating. We also have some legal aid organizations that create tons. I mean, we've got quite a few legal aid organizations that we work with to help them provide services to their clients, or their clientele, their market. So you'll see those on the marketplace too, and you can look at a few of those. Okay, and Trisha put the link for Hello Divorce in the chat. And good, I see some Q&A, so I'll get to those in just a second. But yeah, great question. How do we see some of those? And in just a second, when we pull up our sort of demo on how to create a workflow, you can kind of see the internal workings of how that looks. Also take a look at My Probate Docs. I think it's myprobatedocs.com. So no space, myprobatedocs.com. This Gavel customer, great attorney, his name is John Fritz. He created entire probate case files that he automates, and he actually provides these to other attorneys. So his app is his product is directed at other attorneys, and they fill out this questionnaire for their clients. They get his whole case file of documents. So that's a great, like, out of the box way to think about it. Maybe you want to create estate planning automations for other attorneys in your jurisdiction. You fill out like an entire case file, you become like the easiest way for attorneys to draft their documents. And I think this sort of model does very well. So that's great. Okay, see, somebody put an anonymous Q&A that you could build a website or funnel and then lead them to your Gavel and then the client portal. Yeah, exactly. You can create a website and you can embed your workflow in the website. You could put a paywall up so that people can't access those documents that you've created, your legal product, until they pay the fee that you've determined is the price for your product. We integrate with Stripe to do that. I'm not sure if there are other platforms that are doing that right now in that same way, but I know that we've got that capability. So yeah, great point. You've got to get, like, if you don't want to go on our marketplace, you don't have to. You can do it all on your own with your own website. You just have to do like your own marketing to get out there and get clicks and Google views and get them into the funnel. But yeah, I mean, like, check out Hello Divorce and their marketing to see how they're doing that, their consumer marketing. Okay, so I see a comment here from Jay that he's trying to do something similar, automating personal injury and trying for estate planning. And he suggests asking one question at a time. And so even if you do have a ton of questions, that answering it or asking one question at a time makes it much more palatable for the customer. That's a great tip. Okay, and then I see another question here. What was the website? It should be myprobatedocs.com. But I will double check that in just a second. And in fact, let's see. Okay, Trisha, if you have your demo site up and you want to pull that up, I can grab the links so that we don't have any dead air, and I can pull up a couple of links and put them in the chat.
Sounds good. I can do that.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second.
All right, everybody. So this is the demo site that we have for the Gavel builder site. This is what it looks like if you are a builder. We have 4 different types of users that we utilize. And so in a builder seat, we're able to actually create workflows, which is the questionnaires that you're creating. And then we also utilize the data manager here as well. So anytime you make a workflow and it gets filled out, it is run through either by a client or internally. It then is set up in your data manager as a session. And so I'm going to show you here, I can search by workflow, or I can search by actually a variable name. So if you have a client's name is getting gathered, I can search by that individual and find different workflows that they've filled out before. I can also search by workflow. And so if I go ahead and search for my commercial NDA, I can look at this one here. And I know this is not an estate planning workflow, but you can see here that I have a bunch of different sessions that have been created and have been filled out here. So during this, I can actually download the documents again that I've created from that session. I can reopen it and visit it again, but I can also toggle it and choose that session and push it into another workflow. And this is what we were describing earlier. We were talking about actually taking data sets and then putting all that into a different workflow. That way you can carry data and maintain consistency on that data throughout all of these different workflows. So here, this will go push through here, and you'll see that I have some items that are already filled out. I'm already on the 3rd page of my workflow because these other 2 pages have already been filled out. I'm just adding more data sets here into the next workflow. So that's kind of an example of what it takes to utilize the data manager.
Awesome. Thank you, Trisha. Let us know if anybody has questions on that. Let's see. I don't see anything in the chat. I did put the marketplace link in there, and it looks like Trisha and Jay got the My Probate Docs link in there, so you can take a look at those. So let's keep moving. We've got about 10 or 11 minutes left. I want to make sure that we get a little bit of that workshop in where you can see how we create workflows. And like I said, if we can't, I don't know that we'll get to the template today. I want to leave a little bit of extra time for questions, but if we can't, I'll send you some video links. We'll make sure that you guys get to see that. Okay, let me pull up my screen. Bear with me one second. I just moved this week and I don't have my second monitor up, so I'm living with my laptop screen. I'm feeling very old right now because I can't see anything. Okay, share screen. Awesome. Okay. So this is my login page when I log into Gavel, and we're going to create a new workflow, but you can kind of ignore what I have on here. I do a lot of test workflows where I'm like I come up with an idea that I want to automate, and I might start testing a workflow to see if there's a way to do it. And there's usually like 12 different ways to do it. And I have to test out the one that I like. So we're going to go up here and click new workflow. And we're going to just say estate planning intake. Trisha, can you see my screen? Good. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry to ask you right when you took a sip. So for me, I really like the intake method. It's just the way my brain works. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to say client intake. I'm going to name the section here. So we're just going to put names. How about we'll do testators. Okay. So first question is, who are we talking to? Who's the client? We want to, if we're going to do the client intake method, we're going to assume that this workflow, this automation is going to be seen by the client. So right now, this is the behind the scenes view, the builder view. I'll show you what it looks like in a client facing version in just a few minutes, but I'm just going to put a few questions on here so you get the feel of it. We're not going to go through the whole intake process, especially, like I said, some of the more complicated estate plans might have a lot of questions. So we'll just go through a few, but we might ask the client's name. So if we're client facing, we're going to say, what is your name? And we're going to give it a variable name. So we're going to say client name. And it's going to be a text question. It is required. We need the client name to create an estate plan, so we don't want to make it optional. And then that's it for that first question. Next question, we might want to put birth date. So we're going to use a date here. What is your birth date? And we're going to create a variable name, client birth date. And it's a date question. So I'm going to save this so you guys can see what it looks like. We're going to press run. And this is what it's going to look like to the client. So you might not want to you have the top of your page, the heading say testators for the client, because they're going to say, what does this term mean? I don't know what this means. So you can go back, we'll change it to something that's more client friendly, but you can see what is your name. Maybe your name's Fred. What is your birthday? You can actually choose a drop down menu, or you can just type it in however you want to. Now, how do I get back to my workflow? All my tabs. There we go. Okay. So we would change this here to, please fill out this form. And you're going to create much better wording than me as I'm on the spot here. So you're going to do much better. Okay. And then we might say, are you married? That's going to be a yes, no question, because we want to know if we need to put a spouse in here. If we have any tax issues that are going to pop up for a spouse, if we need to be asking information about the spouse, maybe they're going to keep them out of the will completely. We still need to know who they are. And so it's good for our record keeping. So we're going to say the variable name is spouse. Yes, no. You can name it whatever you want. I sometimes use very obvious names that Trisha probably has a much more streamlined method, but this is how my brain works. And so the next question is spouse's name. And what we're going to show here is how we can make this a little more client friendly. So we don't want all of these empty questions to show up when you have your client intake form. We're going to make this one question show up only if the client has said, yes, I do have a spouse. We only want this question to show up then. So spouse name, text, we're going to add logic by clicking this button on the side. And we're going to show this question only if the client spouse, yes, no, is equal to yes. That way, we're going to save this and run it. That way, if you've got a client who's not married, we don't have to have them scroll through a bunch of questions that may not apply to them. So again, this is Fred. His birthday was yesterday, but he already wants a will, and he's already married. So we click yes, and this question shows up. Otherwise, you're not going to see it, and it's not going to affect your end template when we create that. So let's go back and do one more thing. We're running short on time. We're not going to show the full template version right now, but I do want to show you the repeating item version, or the repeating item feature, because that is so important for estate planning. Again, for like listing beneficiaries and people especially, but it could be important for like if you need to list assets and things like that. So again, you can see my 20 bazillion tabs that are open. Oh, hold on. There we go, this one. Okay. We're going to add a new page. Let me move my Zoom controls for this repeating item. We're going to name your beneficiaries here. Again, you'll have much friendlier wording. I'm just being quick. And then we want to choose repeating item down here. So we're going to name this beneficiaries. And you might have several types of information that you need for a repeating item. So we know we need their name. We're going to ask what is the name. We're going to say beneficiary name. It's a text. We're going to add another question. What is their birth date? Or you could say, are they over the age of 18 as of X dates? Because I know sometimes that's the information that we really need. Are they a minor or not? So you could ask it that way. I suggest getting their birth date, and then we can calculate if we need to after that. The beneficiary birth date, that's going to be a date. So that's all we're going to add for now in terms of repeating items. I'm going to save that. We're going to run it so that you can see how it works. So Fred, again, he was born yesterday. He's not married this time, but he does have beneficiaries. So the beneficiary is going to be Trisha. She's going to inherit from Fred. Her birth date was 2 days ago. We're going to add another. So this is where the repeating part comes in. We will have as many of these as you need. Maybe there are 50 beneficiaries, maybe there's only one, but this is going to account for any sort of permutation of that. And I don't actually, is there a limit, Trisha? Is it like 1,000 or something? There's no limit. Okay. You could have somebody with 1 million beneficiaries. Test it out. See, give us some QA testing here. Maybe not everybody. Don't all go rush to do that. But this time we'll do Maddie, since she drafted some of the content for this, and her birthday was, well, let's say St. Patrick's Day. So we're going to continue, and you can see on the next page, all of the repeating items are going to be in this sort of like table format. You will be able to see all of this in Data Manager that Trisha kind of showed you a little bit about that earlier. So this is one of the best features and most valuable features, in my opinion, for estate planning automation. So whatever platform you're using, obviously Gavel has this. Just make sure you're able to add as many beneficiaries as you need. If you're just doing like a pure fill in the blank sort of automation, it's going to be a little bit harder. You're going to have to go back in and do a lot more edits, and it may not work every time. Awesome. Okay, we are running up on time. We've got about 2 minutes left. If you have questions, put them in the chat. I want to make sure that we are answering everything, and I'll stay on for a couple of extra minutes to make sure we've got that. But I'll send you guys some links to videos where we're filling out templates and how we're actually connecting this workflow with your template. In Gavel, we can actually do that through Microsoft Word. You don't have to learn a new platform for your template. You can do it all in Word, which is great. There's an add-in, and all you have to do is press the button for, I want this repeating item to go here. You press a button, and you don't have to do any coding. It just does it for you, which is what I needed as somebody who is code deficient. Well, I don't know if there's a nice way to put it, but we'll say that. Okay, does Gavel offer automation and following up with clients to complete workflow? I know we can assign workflows to clients through our client portal. So that's one way you can assign them. I think, I don't know that we have reminders, but that might be a great feature for us to put on the wish list, is have reminders on those assignments. But what I would suggest is using some sort of email sequencing program. A lot of practice management software platforms have this, where you can send out automated emails if nobody's replied. You can do this sometimes through other platforms as well. Trisha, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I also suggested in our data manager, you can actually see where people have left off by looking through where they have in their sessions. And if there are documents at the output and there's no download, the download's kind of faded, that means they haven't completed that workflow to generate documents yet. So you can actually send a continuation link on your data manager to those people. It's a little more manual than automated, but it is possible to kind of follow up with your clients that way as well.
Yeah, really good idea. And I would say like the time that you're saving in drafting all of these documents, whether it's you saving that time or your staff or other legal professionals in your department or your office, you can use that time, like just a small portion of that to, do a check every day, who's completed it, who hasn't, or once a week even, depending on your caseload and your workload. And, some of that might just be like manual checking. But I think that's such a good question and point. Adding reminders on that and tasks. I know somebody has asked about tasks before, like adding task management to our data manager. But those are great. And I'll make sure it's on the wish list. In fact, we have a product wish list. If there's something that you want to add, and we actually look at this when we are looking at what features our engineers will be working on next, we look at what our customers are requesting. So I'll get the link for that in just a second. Looking at the chat, looks like David stated that he's used Zapier to trigger. Oh, that's such a good idea. So he's used Zapier to trigger when the workflow is completed to schedule follow-up tasks in various systems. Great point. Zapier can, if you've got that document trigger in Zapier, since we've got that integration with them, or sorry, not document, I told you I would do it. Gavel trigger. You can then, whatever platforms you're using, Zapier is great because it connects to so many different things. It's, pretty reasonably priced. There's even a free version to use, but you can trigger reminders that way. Excellent point, David. I'm so glad you brought that up. Good. And then Trisha just put the link for the wish list. So you can click on that link if there's something that you want to see in Gavel, Data Manager, you can add that. Awesome. Well, we just are a couple of minutes over. I'm going to stay on just 1 or 2 more minutes if anybody has questions. But thank you so much for joining us. I hope we were able to answer some questions about automating estate planning. I want to make sure you guys get to see a template in action. So I will send you some links via email. So make sure to keep an eye on your email over the next day or two. And if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. My email address, I'll put it in the chat, but it's molly@gavel.io. And I'm happy to answer any questions or even just talk to you about what it was like to automate my practice and, what a difference it made for me. Or if you've got practical questions or even silly questions, happy to answer silly questions. I have 2 kids. I do it all day long. So happy to answer any kind of question. Awesome. Well, I see some comments from the chat. Thank you guys so much for attending. Oh, good point, Trisha. You can book a demo. Trisha and her team, they're amazing at demos. Yeah, please book a demo if you want to learn more. We also, if you're already a Gavel customer, you can book a customer success call and just get some additional, you get your questions answered on what you're already doing. So there's a different link for that though. And if we need to, we can send that out in the email that goes out. But yes, thank you again, everybody, for attending. Does anybody else have questions? Let's see. Don't see anything in the Q&A. Trisha, if you want to put the link for the customer success call, maybe in the chat, that would be perfect. And then once that link is up for a couple of seconds, there we go. Okay, so that's the link if you are a current Gavel customer. And I know if you are thinking about using Gavel to automate like a big practice department, or if you're in a larger firm, let us know. We can give you a more specific demo for that circumstance too. We'll bring in our sales lead, John. He's the expert in the enterprise level type of demos, so we'll bring him in too. But awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. I hope you all have an amazing day. We'll get this up on our YouTube channel. We'll send you a link, and I'll send you some links to using the Word add-in and creating that actual document at the end. But I am so glad you guys joined me. Thank you. Y'all have a great week.